Sure. Thank you.
Thank goodness for technology.
Mm-hmm.
If we had to figure out how to open the doors and let 165 people in the door, it wouldn't go this quickly for sure.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Great, good. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really excited for today's event. We have been planning very diligently to try to create an opportunity for candidates to meet districts, districts to meet candidates, and we're just thrilled to have everybody here. My name is Brian Ladwig. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources in the Harrison Central School District, and I'm also the President of the Lower Hudson Council of School Personnel Administrators. The Council of School Personnel Administrators is a professional association that represents 40 districts throughout Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, and Orange counties. And these are really dedicated professionals that work to support their schools to make sure that they have the teachers that their schools need to teach kids and be successful. And we've been doing a lot of work as a professional association in the last 2 years, thinking about diversity in our schools, diversity initiatives. And so we're really excited to put on this event today and to welcome everyone. You know, I have to say, when we thought about how will we put on a job fair for a bunch of candidates and think about doing so in the context of a pandemic and the challenges that everyone is facing, we turned to this virtual platform thinking it was the best way to make these connections. And what we're actually coming to learn is that there are a few silver linings in this Zoom environment. We were fortunate in being able to recruit over 700 people to participate at various times throughout the day today in this event. And from as far away as Hong Kong and Spain. So this is really an international event now, which is extremely exciting to us because we really like extending our reach and being able to connect with candidates from everywhere. So before we go too much further along, I want to just offer some thanks. This event couldn't have possibly happened without a really dedicated design team, administrators who represent the districts that are here today, came together for the last several months, thinking about how we make this experience really meaningful for candidates so that it was beneficial to the districts, but more importantly to you as candidates, helping support your candidacy and your pursuit of your next teaching opportunity. In particular, I want to just mention the Lower Hudson Council Executive Board, who bring a lot of leadership to bear in their districts, but also in our association. So Joan Garone is the Lower Hudson Council Vice President, and she's the Director of HR in the Ossining Union Free School District. Drew Patrick is our Treasurer, and he's the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Leadership Development in Scarsdale. And Neil Boyle is our secretary, the executive director of HR and professional development at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. So a really dedicated group of volunteers who have really contributed well to today's work. So thank you for that. So just by way of introduction to this panel discussion, I'd like to just share with you that we have been thinking, and I say by we, I mean each of us in our respective roles as HR administrators, but also in our districts, in each of our school districts, trying to think deeply about issues of diversity and trying to make our schools culturally responsive and trying to think about how we create a teaching faculty that reflects the diversity in our communities. And I'll share with you that that has been a challenge for school districts, recruiting and finding diverse candidates. And by the way, we don't define or delimit what we mean by diverse candidates. We recognize that people will self-identify for them what diversity means. And we've been taking a very welcoming and inclusive approach even to this event, not delimiting who can attend except as they may self-identify. But the questions that we've been asking ourselves, how do we recruit, hire, and retain candidates that reflect the diversity in our communities? How do we structure our schools in ways that make them culturally responsive, make them welcoming and receptive to students, to community members, to faculty, so that our schools really represent what we aspire for our communities, which is something that I think we're all committed to and thinking deeply about. The Lower Hudson Council recently has been, in the last 2 years, has been partnering with NYU's Metropolitan Center for Research on Equity and the Transformation of Schools, which has partnered with us and helped us to think about how we pursue those diversity initiatives, how we think about our hiring practices, even district policies. And that's been a really valuable partnership that I think has helped lead us through some challenging conversations, a lot of introspection and reflection, and then to try to turn that into action steps that we can take as individual school districts. So today's really an extension of that work. Traditionally, a job fair format, as you all are probably familiar, is meant to just connect candidates to employers, right? Sort of the obvious. And what we decided is that, every interaction that we have is a learning opportunity. It's a learning opportunity for us, and it's a learning opportunity for you. And so we wanted to capitalize on this moment and the Zoom platform to be able to try to do something more than just have candidates meet districts. So today's format involves 3 main parts, and we're encouraging everybody to participate in all 3. The first is this panel discussion, and I'm going to introduce our panelists in just a moment, where we'll talk about diversity initiatives in our district. The second part is a series of webinar workshops that are really designed to help support you as candidates, develop you professionally, and prepare you for your job search, because we want to signal to you that we care about your development, we care about your growth as candidates who may come to work for our districts. And then finally, the meet and greet component is this afternoon, where you have opportunities to introduce yourself and meet district representatives and make a connection, so that coming out of today, it can lead hopefully to opportunities for interviews to explore future opportunities in different districts. So the panel discussion today, I'm really excited about. We have 4 really thoughtful administrators who are joining us to contribute their thinking, their expertise. We're hoping to have a conversation to explore some of the diversity initiatives in our districts. And I'll just briefly introduce each of them. And in the course of today's conversation, you'll get to know them a little bit better, I think, as well. So Dr. Ray Sanchez is the superintendent in the Ossining School District and a former HR administrator as well. So he brings a dual perspective to this conversation. Dr. Winsome Gregory is the assistant superintendent for curriculum, instruction, and personnel in NIAC. Julio Vasquez is the director of instruction and human resources in North Salem Central School District. And Tasha Brown is a principal at Edgewood Elementary School in Scarsdale. So thanks to all of you for joining today and for contributing your expertise. It's great to have you. So what I thought we might just get started with is diversity in our schools. I know we've all been thinking about it. We've all been working hard at it. Maybe one of you wants to take the lead in just sharing some of your own experiences and thoughts as you've tried to lead those initiatives in your district.
I'll start. I'd say welcome to everyone. It's just very energizing to be able to be here with so many potential champions and contributors to student success. Personally, I'm grateful for the direction in which the society, as well as our school districts and education in general, is moving regarding diversity and equity. These terms have been used interchangeably while not being the same. And those concepts currently are increasingly and importantly a part of our lexicon and our focus. And I've been a part of NIAC Public Schools for 19 years. But prior to those 19 years, NIAC has been working, they have been on a journey to bridge the gap between its diversity and the disparities in outcomes along racial lines. So this is very, very important for us. In NIAC, race, as well as all the other aspects of diversity, has been a sense of pride. This has been a main pride for us. It's historically diverse in terms of race, in terms of religion, in terms of socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, and even along political lines. It truly is a microcosm of society, but we really have a commitment to look at our diversity as a baseline to addressing disparities of outcomes and to move towards more race-conscious practices. We are all students, all our families, all staff members and stakeholders see themselves as valued members of our community and to develop a sense of pride and belonging. I think that with that commitment, we have had to engage the board. It's not a commitment that you can do independently. It has to be involve the board, it has to involve the community. And we have in place an equity plan that enables us to address all aspects of the district and its commitment. It first addresses culturally responsive workforce, which is what we're talking about today. It addresses culturally responsive teaching and learning. It addresses a family and community engagement, and also overall cultural and organizational change, transformation in general. So in NIAC, this has been such a commitment for such a long time, but we feel that we are in a good place, and it's quite in line with what's happening now in general in in terms of throughout the United States, as well as the field of education. So that's where we are here in NIAC at this point.
Thank
Would
you.
you like to talk about your, oh, sorry, Julio, go ahead.
Just wanted to thank Winsome for starting us off with that. And I can say that I fully agree with everything that she's saying. You know, you have to have the entire community wanting to be engaged with this work. And I want to say that I'm so proud that in North Salem, a lot of the impetus for our work has in large part been driven by our students. And we've partnered with our students in doing this work. We have a group of current students and alumni who call themselves the North Salem Students for Racial Justice. And early on, they had reached out to our faculty and asked hard questions in terms of how are we diversifying our curriculum? You know, how are we being more inclusive in our community? Our community is primarily white. We have about maybe 17% of our students are Hispanic, 1% Black, 3% multiracial. And, you know, in this community, to hear from our white students along with our minority students state that they want this work to be done, that's inspiring, and it's what we work towards. So for us, it's been a lot of listening and bringing in our parents, bringing in other community members, NYU Metro Center to work with us in doing this work. And really being in a place of being humble and knowing that we don't have all the answers in how to do this work, but the commitment is there to be better. The commitment is there to diversify our teaching staff so that it is more reflective of the students in our community. And, you know, for me, it's a great honor to be invited to this panel to learn from my colleagues and, you know, just have the heart and investment in doing this work for the long haul, because it's not something that you create a professional development session and all of a sudden it's done. You know, this is work that involves working at it every day for the long haul.
You want to go first, or? All right, I'll jump in. This is the awkward Zoom silence, I guess, sometimes. We're all super polite on this panel. So first, I just want to thank Dr. Ledwick and the Lower Hudson Council for this invitation and the opportunity to be part of this panel with my esteemed colleagues, and for this discussion, because I think it's really critical, and I think we can all agree on that. And we're all doing the work in different ways because our communities are different, and there are similarities at the same time. I would just say that, I've been in the Ossining School District for 23 plus years, both as as a teacher and then have fortunate to be superintendent for the past 7. And I've seen this community really focus on equity and diversity for many, many years in various forms. Going far back as, the late 60s, where they worked to desegregate the schools and move to a Princeton plan. Having Pedro Noguera come to our district to really study and look at our high school and trying to really understand how we can create more inclusive environment for our students and staff, to more recently where we too are working with NYU around this very topic of equity and diversity. Our district has multi-layers in terms of this work, and in that at the board level, the board has passed a resolution that equity and diversity will be discussed at every board meeting, whether it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or full hour of. So there is a commitment to engage in that conversation at the board discussion each meeting. At the building levels, we've established building equity committees that are leading professional development, that are really thinking about the needs of the students from age appropriateness, but also the topics and engaging their colleagues, so peers, working with peers on in leading professional development. And then I think, as Julio noted, I think one of the more powerful elements that we have is that of our students and their voice. So we have student equity committee leaders at the high school and the middle school. And in their cases, they're leading PD. They're leading teach-ins with our staff. Their voice is really critically important in terms of shifting some of the work and what they want to see, and also the environment that they want to see sort of shift in various ways. So they've been really, really powerful in the work. I would just add to it too that, in just a 10-year span, our district has shifted completely, right? So what I mean by that specifically is we've seen a greater, an increase in socioeconomic students living in poverty. Our Latinx population is now our majority. So the way we worked 10 years ago has to shift and be different than when it was before. So, and I wouldn't say they're simple things, but important things like translating all our materials that go out, to the various programmings and services that we have for our students and families have shifted in that period of time. And we've taken on community schools, which is another aspect of ensuring that, when we start thinking about the services that we provide our families, it needs to be all inclusive because their needs are different. So, and aside from that, it's very similar to what each of you have said in that we're working to diversify our staff, and it's really, really critical. It's a challenge, but it's really critical. And the last thing I would just leave you with is an essential question that we always ask ourselves, and it comes from NYU, is how do we disrupt and dismantle inequity within our sphere of influence? Because the truth is that whether you're a student, a teaching assistant, a teacher, a building leader, or a board of education, you all have, we each have a sphere of influence. And so it's really working towards creating a culture where we all know and take it on together, because that's how it's really going to shift throughout our entire system.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. It's a privilege to be on this panel and as a principal. So I echo so many of the sentiments already shared by our colleagues on the panel. And a couple of things to add. I think sometimes diverse candidates may think that districts like a Scarsdale or districts that are not so diverse are not engaged in this work. And I'd like you to know that we are. I think one of the things that it's hard to ignore is the political landscape and what's happening in our world, our country, and then what is our moral responsibility as educators to make sure that we prepare students to go out to be global citizens and to make the world a better place. This is my second year in Scarsdale, and so at the beginning of my journey here, we started to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. and what that means in so many different ways, coming to a shared understanding about how we'll define it as a school district and also at the building level, making sure that it also takes into account students with disabilities and special needs, students who may identify very differently, right? So making sure that, as Winsome spoke about, is how is that being defined in your school district? How are you inviting people to the table, making sure that all stakeholders are present in the conversations? So we started to do that work in Scarsdale. It is multi-layered, as Ray talked about, in terms of tentacles extending into the buildings and looking very differently. I can speak for Edgewood that as we began this January meeting for the first time, I posed a series of questions to my committee, which are made up of parents, teachers, and a teaching aide, about how are we going to define this work and what measurements do we want to put in place to say that we're moving towards the goals that we've set forth. And how are we defining multiculturalism and diversity and equity as a school community? What does that mean to us? Are we just okay with the multicultural fairs? Are we looking to go deeper, right? Where children will feel comfortable that if they celebrate Diwali, they're not uncomfortable to share or bring a food in from their own culture during that time? Are we looking to just stay surface level? So we started to have those conversations, and they take courage to have those, because it really does push people beyond a comfort level. One thing I've noted is that we're all interested and invested in doing this work. I think tools or frameworks can be helpful so that people feel comfortable and invited into the conversation to talk about things that are not ordinarily maybe talked about in districts that are pretty homogenous. My school happens to be pretty diverse. And so the interest and investment is quite different at Edgewood, but I would say across our school district, there is an increased commitment to make sure that we're sending children out into the world that are prepared to make it a better place. And so the work is happening. And I think it's important that people know that even in districts like this, that may not be as diverse, that we are committed to that. Another thing I wanted to bring up is also making sure that children see themselves in the literature that we have. That's also been something we've taken on as a district, making sure that we've curated diverse literature so kids see themselves in books. Teachers College has done a wonderful job curating a wonderful library. If you're ever familiar with the work of having kids see themselves through windows and sliding glass doors. And so that's really been helpful as we take a really close look at the books that we have, so that children see themselves in those books, but also can imagine the world that they're going out into, even if they're not in the literature themselves. So really important work, and very encouraged and optimistic to be a part of it.
I think that's such a critical component of the work. Thank you for mentioning that. Because we have been working at diversifying our staff, and we have been working at ensuring that people feel welcome and everyone is feeling welcome in the district. But exactly what does that mean? And several years ago, we had the staff start to engage in doing racism workshops. And that workshop was just incredibly eye-opening. It was by the People's Institute. And what we realized is that a lot of our work was centered around trying to fix students, trying to work on the students instead of dismantling the structural issues, the institutional racism, to make sure that the outcomes for students is different from what we're getting now, because the system right now is giving us exactly what it's designed to do. And so dismantling the system in order to get better outcomes is something that we have a huge task that we took on. We had most of our staff members, I think 40% of our staff, but most of our administrators, Board of Education, have gone through this workshop. But beyond going through the workshop, we created in our districts courageous conversation groups in each building. And on a monthly basis, they engage in those discussions. We have book studies that are happening in every building. And we're also engaged with Dr. Todd Mealy. He is the gentleman who wrote the book on race-conscious pedagogy. And we are looking at exactly that, looking at our resources, how are children seeing their lives centered in those classrooms, and to make sure that they're feeling that they are valued. They're also able to see the goal of diversifying our staff is that they're able to see role models. But beyond role models, it's not only the BIPOC student, but also students, white students can see administrators, teachers of color in positions of power, because it helps them to understand and get a very different perspective, leaving us going into a diverse environment. So it's a great deal of work. It's a great deal of commitment on the part of everyone. I think that we are at a critical mass right now where people are truly engaged in wanting to learn more in order to be able to do better and to make sure that we are moving towards a race conscious community.
No, I think that's a great observation, Winsome. And I'm reminded of, I think the challenge historically, I'll just speak from our experience in Harrison, we've prided ourselves on trying to be inclusive in the way we recruit candidates, but I will admit that we have been more passive. Looking back now, we've been more passive in our approach and not quite active enough in terms of trying to reach into communities that reflect diversity, to try to cultivate candidates that would see Harrison as a welcoming place where they would be excited to come and teach and feel supported in their professional journey. I'd be interested to hear you talk as panelists about the outreach that you've done, either to try to cultivate more diverse candidates or to support them once they do arrive in your district as teachers.
So I'm happy to start. First, I have to acknowledge I seem to have the more rustic background here. So just I couldn't make the screen changes for anyone that's watching. But I think your question's a great question in that I'll just share something that I'm very excited about, because I think it speaks to what you said, Brian, in terms of just trying to do the outreach within your community and what we see is, in a district that's very diverse, like an Ossining School District, we often talk to students about, careers, but I'm not sure we always highlight the field of education the way that we should. To see it as a pathway, to pursue your passions as well. And what we all know is the significant impact you can have on a child's life, but also just, in the outreach and the impact you can have overall within a community. So we started this year and we anticipate having our first cohort of future teachers, which is sort of a program that we're establishing within the context of our high school. We have dual language programs, so we have bilingual students. So how do we get them to see themselves as potentially moving into education? We have these fields for STEAM and we have other pathways within our, let's just use our high school as an example. So we're starting to establish that program where students and scholars are going to move through our high school with eventually in partnership with SUNY New Paltz, so that they can begin their education degree thereafter. So hopefully gaining credits at the high school, moving into New Paltz, and then hopefully graduating. And then hopefully at the last hope is that we create this sort of cycle where they see themselves coming back to a community like Ossining and giving back to their community in this case. So that's one way that we're thinking now. In a different way, it's just how do we work with our talented students to engage them in education. I think unfortunately we sometimes face like a PR issue in terms of education. Sometimes it's presented as I think we need to do more of advertising and engaging students as this being a real pathway for a career and a profession. For all the reasons why we're here. And then on top of that, I would just add that we do, reach out and started to increase our reach out to various universities and other entities. And I think this pandemic has provided yet, an example, and we often talk about it, the world's flat, but now more than ever, like the forum you've created, we can reach out to folks in different ways than we have in the past, where we can not only just engage, in the past it might be a phone call. Now we're using Zoom as a platform that could really look to talk to students in ways that we haven't done before, and with universities that we haven't been able to reach in the past where we formerly would drive to. So we have a number of partnerships that we've increased this past year. And even if it's just a meet and greet, we just want them to know Ossining is there and to see it as a potential place. To not just come and work, but to see it as a home and a place where they can engage with the mission and vision that we have for our community and our district.
Just wanted to add to what Ray is stating in regard to supporting diverse candidates. I think one of the biggest ways that we try to support our candidates is by having a positive and collaborative relationship with our teachers union and working with our union to make sure that our teachers, if they're encountering difficulties in the district, feel supported and have someone to speak to, someone to mentor them. Our teachers begin their mentoring process the minute that they're hired in the district, and it continues throughout the year. And anytime they switch from one position in the district to another. I think we're also very fortunate in being a small school district. We have 120 teachers in our school district. So, we're very small and close knit. And we're constantly supporting each other and reaching out to one another. We have one-on-one conversations with our teachers. We're a place where a teacher can't get lost, and teachers that begin their careers in North Salem end their careers in North Salem.
I agree with what both of you just shared about the things that you're engaging in your district. We are not necessarily as far in terms of how we are utilizing the or encouraging the students to look at teaching as a valuable pathway. I think that's something that we can enhance as we move forward. But thus, we have a DNI council that is truly looking at our hiring and recruiting practices. Because as a candidate of color, when you go into a district, even if there are other candidates within that district that are diverse candidates, what does that experience feel like for you? What is that experience on a daily basis like? How comfortable are you? What supports are there in terms of outreach to those candidates? Are they comfortable sharing, what's going on with them? And are you able to know what's going on before they decide to leave and move on to another district because of, whatever reasons? I think that, while we have done a great deal of professional development, this is an area that we have to constantly be working on, because the issue of diversity is a challenging one no matter where you are. No matter how much effort you're putting into this process, you have to be able to be monitoring and ensuring that you are doing those check-ins with your staff members at all times. I think that, for candidates coming in, just knowing that whether or not that district is diverse is something that is critical. You have to decide for yourself. Are you looking for a district that's already diverse? Because in some cases, there's value to go into a district that is not necessarily diverse. And so, being a trailblazer, if that's something that you would like to do, that's something that you have to consider. And then you as a district, knowing that that individual is a trailblazer, is maybe the one of many in your district, would have to go the extra mile on a regular basis to make sure that those little microaggressions or indiscretions or whatever it is that that person may be experiencing, without others being aware that this is happening, is something that's addressed on an ongoing basis. I think it's very important to do that. While we have been working at doing training on implicit biases and so on, I think every day we engage in this conversation, it's more fruitful. It enables us to become more proficient. And I think that, Julio, you mentioned about being humble. We do have to be very, very, very humble about our skills and our knowledge base in doing this work.
It was really not in my head as you all spoke, especially Winsome. I'm in a program right now, doctoral program at Fordham. Dr. Sanchez, I had you as a guest one day. So I have a colleague who's in a neighboring district that's very diverse, and part of her research is looking at why her district, although her student body is so diverse, the teaching staff is not. And really finding research that says, predominantly people who go into education are white, and oftentimes at the elementary level, middle-class white people. And being familiar with Ruby Payne's work, Undoing Racism, right? And the values that we all bring to the educational world. So part of that is a challenge. And as I think about when I started on my journey of thinking I was going to move and where I was going to move, I can say to applicants that you have to consider what the district has messaged as their espoused values and how aligned you are in your work and your journey as an educator, if that's somewhere you want to live and be your forever home. And listen to the stories you hear about the district, because certain times we'll post or espouse our values and then, right, have different things play out. And for the districts, as I heard Brian speak in the beginning about, I'm thinking, what is the messaging that's out there about our districts, why we may not necessarily be places that diverse candidates apply to, right? So they look at our websites, they're all beautiful and they say one thing, but what are they hearing or why they're inhibited to apply, and wondering what our responsibility is to make our districts more attractive for diverse candidates, because I think that's where our responsibility lies. And then the candidate really figuring out if this is somewhere that I would like to continue to grow and learn. And as a diverse candidate that decided to, not necessarily, I wasn't a trailblazer. My cabinet is committed and has actually actualized hiring more diverse administrators and teachers. So I wasn't the first, and I'm happy to say that. In the last few years in Scarsdale at the elementary level, there are 3 of us that are of color, right? And not really understanding the enormity of that, especially being a Black woman and having my parents who are not of color, really being so excited that a Black woman became the 7th principal of Edgewood. And at that moment, I realized that although I were not the first, the enormous responsibility I then had, right, in making sure that all my students saw in me something that they can look up to and value, whether they become an educator or not, that this may be one of the only times that they have a woman of color in such close proximity to them that they can look up to. So lots of different layers here that have already been uncovered. So thank you.
So we have many candidates today that are really excited and eager to talk to school district representatives. I'm wondering if you could give candidates one piece of advice, a pointer, a suggestion, something to try to hold on to and think about as they go and talk with prospective employers. What would you want to tell them? What advice would you give them?
I would just leave them with this. First of all, you're going to be meeting a lot of really great districts and administrators today. So take opportunity to learn from them. But I often say to candidates when they enter our district that as much as we're interviewing you, you should be interviewing us. You have to see it as a place that is not just, once again, just a job, but a place that you can call your home. Do they embody a lot of what, do they speak to your core values as an educator? And so, there's an eagerness obviously to get a position, but in the long haul, it's really, really important that you ensure that this is a place that you see yourself, not only in the now, but for many, many years. Because when a district offers you a job or invites you, they're offering you an opportunity to be part of the family. And they're going to commit from the beginning, as my colleagues here noted, from mentoring to supporting you. And the mentoring is just the start. That support is ongoing for many, many years through professional development and just overall culture. So there's a strong commitment to investing in the individual. So see it as a place that you can spend the rest of your career and eventually retire 20 plus, maybe 30 years plus after that. So, and good luck to everybody.
When I came into NIAC, I think I had, in the back of my mind, I'm sure I thought about the 3 to 5 year plan. It's now 19 years later. And when I walked in, NIAC got a hold of my heart and they haven't given up and let go since. When I met with the staff, there was an immediate connection. I think that's critical, that you do your research, yes. But once you come to that interview, you see, how does that environment feel for you? Does it reflect you? Is there diversity on that interview team? And does that experience, when you walk away, does that leave you feeling like you want to be a part of that community? So I would say do your research and really know the demographics. Trust your instinct, trust your gut, because once you are committed to that district, you will find those instincts in the first place most likely play out later on, as long as you're prepared.
I wanted to add on to that, that you really want to be sure that, you know, you're a good fit, but you also want to give yourself an opportunity to explore what that district might be. And know your value as a diverse candidate and what you're bringing to all of our districts. Know that there are children of color, there are children who are white, who need you as a teacher, who you're going to make a difference in their lives, and who need your passion, who need you to teach more than the content that they're going to learn, but who are going to need you to meet with them as an individual and as a person. And if they can see themselves reflected in you, you can be that role model for them. And in North Salem, that's the kind of teacher that we're looking for.
Well, certainly do your research to make sure that where you are hoping to spend so much of your time, I think as educators, we work really hard. So for me, it's always important that I'm going to be somewhere that I'm happy because I'm spending a lot of time there. So do your research and not just read what's on the district's website, but if there's anyone you could know to get some inside information to really see if this could be your forever home. What are your values? Do you see yourself as a continuous learner? How will that district cultivate that so you can continue to grow and evolve as an educator? So I wish you all good luck in your journeys as you move forward in finding a position.
I'll share one piece of advice for candidates, both for today perhaps and beyond. You know, you come to an interview or you're meeting a district representative and your inclination is to want to explain who you are, right? After all, it's an interview. It's an opportunity to meet someone. So who am I? And that's important. And sometimes people are inclined to say, like, here's what I can do in the classroom. Like, this is my skill set, or here's how I teach. And all of those are important. But the thing that I find most compelling when I talk to a candidate is the why, right? Sort of being explicit about what your why is, what motivates you to be in this profession. Why are you here talking to me today about making a long-term commitment to teach the kids in my district? So I guess I would just encourage candidates to be really clear about the why as a teacher, as a candidate, and as somebody that might be a contributing member of a new school community. I think that's critical. So I know we have accumulated a couple of questions, but I also want to be respectful of everyone's time heading into their next learning opportunity today. So if I may, we can try to post some of the questions that we've received, and those can also get posed in the conversations you have in your workshops today. But I want to just spend a moment to give everybody a little bit of an orientation for the rest of today, so it's clear how the day will go. Drew, I'm going to try to share my screen. I hope I can do that. Yep, it looks like I can. So hopefully you can see what looks like our webpage, which has a few helpful resources for today. If you click on the tab at the top that says schedule, this is just going to orient you to what to expect for the day. Should be coming here slowly. Or not. Here we go. So the sessions that we have coming up starting at 11 o'clock are workshops that we have designed for people to attend and participate in. There are 4 workshop choices, but let me just quickly explain the structure. So they're going to be about 25 minutes, 11 to 11:25, 11:30 to 11:55, and then 12 to 12:25. Even though there are only 3 happening in the next session. The Zoom links are there for you to see. There's also a tab at the top that's called Workshops, and I will click on that just briefly so you can see that as well. You'll be able to join as an attendee to that, and you can pose questions and comments in the chat field associated with that Zoom link as well. Seems like when you're in an active Zoom, your internet connection is a little bit slower. But the presenters that we have for our workshops today are all administrators in our association, the Lower Hudson Council, or their principals. And so we're really fortunate to have them. These are the folks that are making hiring decisions every day. So the topics that you'll see here: presenting your best self, cover letters and resume advice, what to expect in the interview and how to prepare, preparing for demo lessons and lesson studies, and teaching in New York, navigating the certification process. We included that workshop because we know many of the candidates could be coming from outside. We have our meet and greet sessions, and I'm just going to offer a few words to maybe help make this as successful time as possible. So the meet and greet sessions are exactly that. They are 5-minute meet and greet sessions, right? So they're not 20-minute interviews. So you need to self-regulate, you need to be concise, you need to be authentic, but you need to be mindful of your time because you want to get on to your next appointment and there's somebody waiting to join in the appointment that you're leaving. So please be mindful of the time, be on time. And hopefully what you did is took advantage of some of the candidate toolkit resources that we shared, right? So you received a Zoom link for every district that's participating that you scheduled an appointment with. Just make sure you have those Zoom links handy because when you need to get to that next appointment, you'll need to be able to click on that link and go to that Zoom room, and then somebody will greet you and take it from there. Some feedback from everyone. But I want to just return to the panel discussion briefly and say thank you to Ray and to Tasha and Winsome and Julio, sharing your expertise, your perspective, the great work that's happening in your district. You know, I always learn when I talk with my colleagues about how you're thinking about things and the initiatives you're pursuing. And that was true for me today too. So tremendously valuable for me. It's now 10:47. And our workshop sessions are going to start at 11. So we're going to close this session now, and then people can join their workshop sessions at 11. And then at the end of the workshop, head on to the next one, and then we'll see you later in the day. Great.
Thank you as well, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody. And thank you.